Deborah Linsley, known to family and friends as Debbie, was born in Bromley, Kent, England in 1962 to parents Arthur and Marguerite Linsley. Arthur was a retired insurance broker, whereas Marguerite worked for the Department of Social Security, where she specialised in investigating fraud. By 1988, 26-year-old Debbie had left home in Bromley and moved across the border to Scotland's capital city of Edinburgh, where she worked as a hotel manager and receptionist. Though Debbie found it hard to be away from her loved ones, she thrived whilst living in Scotland. By March of that same year, Debbie was preparing to go on a hotel management course down in London. Whilst participating on the course, Debbie made plans to visit her family in Bromley and offered to help with final preparations for her brother Gordon's wedding. Debbie was very excited about the occasion and was looking forward to having her bridesmaid's dress fitted for the occasion around a fortnight later, when she planned to return to London. During the management course, Debbie spoke to a manager at the Sherlock Holmes Hotel in Baker Street, London. So prior to her departure back to Edinburgh, Debbie went to visit the manager to talk about a job opportunity, where she was subsequently offered a position. On March 23rd of 1988 at approximately 2 p.m, Debbie, who was wearing a white blouse, a blue skirt and a black leather jacket, was dropped off by her brother at Pettswood train station, where she purchased a pack of cigarettes and a ticket for the 14:16 train from Orpington to Victoria Station, arriving at its final destination at 2:51 p.m. Interestingly, a man was seen at the originating station, Orpington, staring at women getting on the train to Victoria. Debbie was heading back to the Sherlock Holmes Hotel to have a look around after being offered the management position there. Debbie boarded the train, not knowing that this journey would be her last. The train departed Pettswood at approximately 2:18 p.m. before continuing on to its next stops: Bickley, Bromley South, Shortlands, Beckenham Junction, Kent House, Penge East, Sydenham Hill, West Dulwich, Herne Hill, Brixton and finally Victoria. The train itself consisted of a mix of carriages, including newer designs where the corridors led to the other carriages openly, and older carriages where access to the separate compartments could only be made when the train was at its destination, meaning that these compartments were essentially closed during the entire journey. According to Debbie's family, she was very safety conscious and was wary of the dangers of getting into one of the older carriages where no escape would be possible if a dangerous or threatening situation were to arise. Being in a city as well, Debbie also had a rape whistle attached to her keyring. In the late 1980s, smoking was only permitted in the old-style carriages with the compartments. Debbie, being a smoker, moved into the front first compartment of the second carriage, presumably because she wanted to smoke. Due to how safety conscious Debbie was, it's likely that the compartment was either empty or other women were in the compartment. Debbie is believed to have smoked at least one cigarette and ate some of a sandwich she had with her for the journey. A female passenger reportedly saw a man hurriedly moving into another compartment at around 2:34 p.m. at Penge East Station before reboarding, but whether he was in Debbie's compartment or not remains unclear. He was described as being in his 30s, with dirty blonde hair and a stocky build, with a scruffy appearance, wearing a light brown jacket. According to an 18-year-old French au pair who was in the compartment adjacent to Debbie's, Helene Jusseline, she reportedly heard piercing screams coming from Debbie's compartment sometime after the train left Brixton towards Victoria, the final 6 minutes of the journey, and the longest interval between stops. The screaming reportedly continued for approximately 2 minutes, but instead of alerting the train staff by pulling the communication cord, Helene sat in silence, glued to her seat, too terrified to move. As the train pulled into Victoria Station, Helene allegedly witnessed a large-built man, aged between 40 and 50 years old, exiting the compartment next to Debbie's, and he was limping. The man had collar-length ginger hair and a moustache, but after stepping out onto the platform, Helene lost sight of him. Something interesting to note here is that Helene was the only passenger who reportedly heard screaming coming from Debbie's compartment at 2:43 p.m, though it is alleged that a few more passengers eventually came forward claiming to have heard a commotion of some kind, though the police didn't investigate any further. As the train reached its final destination at London's Victoria Station, British rail staff carried out their usual carriage inspections prior to the next journey's departure. However, at 10 to 3, one of the porters, Ron Lacey, discovered the lifeless body of 26-year-old Debbie Linsley on the floor of the second carriage, surrounded by a pool of blood, some of her own, but some also from her killer. Debbie had clearly put up a fight and injured her attacker, who subsequently fled the scene. Blood was also present on the seat. Alongside defensive wounds on her hands and arms, Debbie had sustained horrific injuries. She had been stabbed with a heavy-bladed knife at least 11 times to the face, neck and abdomen, with 5 stab wounds to the heart, one of these being the fatal blow. The weapon itself was believed to be between 5 and 7.5 inches in length, most likely a kitchen knife of some kind. Police believed that the perpetrator carried the knife with them, meaning that the killing was premeditated, and they believed the perpetrator was opportunistic, willing to attack despite daylight and potential witnesses, but whether the victim was random or not remains a mystery. Superintendent Guy Mills, who worked on the case with the Metropolitan Police, described the crime as savage and brutal. According to a number of sources, witnesses saw a man walking along platform 2 at Victoria Station around 10 minutes later with a bloody injury to his face, a cut on his head and numerous scratches on his cheeks. It's entirely possible that this individual could have been the man who attacked Debbie that day. He was later seen in the men's restroom cleaning his wounds. The man in question was described as being in his late 20s, with long ash blonde hair, standing around 5 feet 5 inches tall. Though the circumstances raised suspicions about this certain individual, police believed that the man was simply returning from an English football match against the Netherlands, where a number of fights had broken out that day. Therefore, they didn't believe that this man was involved in Debbie's death. A short, stocky man was also observed jumping from the train at Victoria. Again, it's unknown whether he was involved in Debbie's murder. The killer's DNA was analysed via the blood sample found in the compartment. However, as of yet, no match has been made. All we know is that the DNA is from a male, and that he may have been a repeat offender. This was due to the fact that Debbie's injuries had been so violently inflicted on her, not to mention the fact that the killer managed to vanish into thin air following their crimes. Motive for the murder has left many scratching their heads. Robbery was quickly ruled out, as Debbie had her purse, jewellery and £5 still on her person when she was discovered. The money was given to her by her brother prior to the train's departure. Police initially believed that Debbie may have been a victim of an attempted sexual assault. However, there was no evidence to suggest that such an assault had taken place. It could have been the perpetrator's initial motive, but since Debbie put up such a fight, they may have abandoned their plans. Many continue to wonder whether this was a random attack or whether someone Debbie knew or befriended was responsible. Following the grisly find, all services from Orpington to Victoria were cancelled as police carried out the hunt for the murder weapon and questioned hundreds of commuters who may have seen something crucial in this case. Out of about 70 passengers on this particular service that Debbie was travelling on, about 50 have been ruled out as having been involved in Debbie's brutal murder. Between 30 and 40 people got off at Victoria, though only 26 have ever been accounted for. The remaining passengers have never come forward. It should also be noted that the murder weapon has never been found. Over 1,200 witness statements were given to the police and over 650 people were questioned, though all were ruled out as having been involved in the crime. Debbie's family and boyfriend, who lived in Scotland, were also ruled out. A reconstruction of the events leading up to, during and following Debbie's murder was created and broadcast on Crime Watch in the hopes that anyone with any information would come forward, but unfortunately nothing of significance came of their appeal. An inquest was conducted in November of 1988 and concluded with a verdict of unlawful killing. Following the murder, British Rail's Eastern Region ordered that their guards regularly patrolled their trains to look out for women, particularly those travelling alone. Advice was also issued by authorities reminding those who travelled aboard trains to stay vigilant at all times, and particularly avoid carriages which restricted means of escape, such as directly onto the tracks or platforms. Only a week after Debbie's murder, the rail company reduced the amount of older carriages operating at off-peak times in order to reduce the chance of passengers feeling isolated. Debbie's funeral was held on April 22nd in her hometown of Bromley at the Holy Trinity Church. She was laid to rest shortly afterwards, wearing the bridesmaid's dress she was due to wear at her brother's wedding. In 2002, Debbie's case was reopened to examine the evidence once again, specifically so that forensic experts could analyse the mystery male DNA found at the scene using new technologies. A full DNA profile of the perpetrator was made. However, the man in question has never been identified. No matches in any national DNA databases have been found. Familial DNA testing was reportedly underway in mid-2020, though unfortunately, as far as we know, no new leads have been found. Debbie Linsley was a bright, compassionate and intelligent 26-year-old woman whose life was tragically cut short. Her parents continued to appeal to the public over the years, hoping to bring the truth to light. All they want is answers and for justice to be served. Unfortunately, Marguerite has since passed away without ever knowing who killed her daughter or why. But Debbie's remaining family have not given up hope at finding justice and continue to search for the truth to this day. Arthur Linsley, Debbie's father, told the newspapers that everybody loved Debbie. She was full of life and always had a stream of kids following her around. I never got to walk Debbie down the aisle or watch her have her own children. All she did was get on a train in the afternoon in broad daylight. She paid for it with her life. As of 2013, there is a £20,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of Debbie's killer.